Hello everyone, this is Angela, and welcome to my channel, Angie the ENTJ. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and click on the notifications bell so that you will know whenever I upload any new content. So in today's video, I will go over an interactive article from the New York Times that was published a couple of years ago around the time of International Women's Day about the value of women's unpaid, uncompensated labor. I will leave a link in the description box so that you can see it for yourself, and be sure to share this video. Women, we oftentimes do not know what we are worth as individuals, and as a result, we usually end up getting the short end of the stick or losing out on opportunities to empower ourselves, even when we have the best intentions in mind. So I am covering this interactive article to help you to have a better perspective about what you really mean to the world. And you'll see how that worth is often downplayed, dismissed, and overlooked. So with that in mind, let's get into it. This interactive article is titled, "Women's Unpaid Labor is Worth $10,900 billion." Y'all, this was back in 2020, so you can imagine that it has ballooned to well over $12 trillion here in 2023. And this is from all of the women globally. To put it into perspective, there are over 8 billion people on the planet right now. Less than half of us are girls and women. So if you exclude newborns and toddlers, if you exclude those who are otherwise too fragile, such as the very elderly, to work, less than half of the people on the planet is performing unpaid labor that is worth more than $10,900 billion back in 2020 alone. It goes on to say that if American women earned minimum wage for the unpaid work they do around the house and caring for relatives, we, American women, would have made $1.5 trillion last year in extra income. And this is just doing straight line math on the number of hours per woman and paying a minimum wage. So this is a very conservative number, the $1.5 trillion. I can tell you right now, it's definitely more than that. And this is not even accounting for the value of skilled labor that women provide as a benefit to their families and to their communities, and doing this all without compensation. So let me get back to the article. It says globally that women would have earned $10.9 trillion, and it's showing an interactive graph displaying a scale of the uncompensated economic contributions of the women of various nations, including India, the US, and China. Now, for a moment, I want to take the time to point something out here, because the population of both China and India are well above 1 billion people each, and they are also each dealing with a very crucial shortage of women. Yet the average Chinese woman and the average American woman, as we will soon see here, are performing about 4 hours of uncompensated labor daily. The average Indian woman is performing about 6 hours. And again, these estimates are very conservative numbers. So as we continue down the article, it says that if you had a bucket that is big enough to hold all of the money made in 2018 by 50 of the biggest companies in the world, okay, it continues to go down and read and says that the $10.9 trillion that women did not make, okay, the $10.9 trillion is an estimation of what our uncompensated labor is worth. So this is money that we did not make. If we were to use the same bucket to contain the $10.9 trillion that we did not make, okay, that is used to hold all of the profits of 50 of the biggest companies in the world, the amount of our labor would overflow it. It would not be big enough, okay? In other words, you're working for free, you're not getting paid, everyone is happy and benefiting except you, including 50 of the biggest corporations on the planet. And if all of the women on the planet got paid for what they did, that money would be worth more than the 50 biggest companies in the world, their profits all combined. Now, let me give you some of the names of these companies that are in this article because you can see it. Walmart, Royal Dutch Shell, Saudi Aramco, BP, ExxonMobil, Volkswagen, Toyota Motor, Apple, Berkshire Hathaway, Amazon.com, United Health Group, Samsung, CVS, what else? AT&T, okay, Costco, Bank of China, Walgreens, Boots Alliance, JP Morgan Chase, Verizon, General Electric, Mitsubishi, Chevron, Honda Motor, okay? This is just to name a handful of 50 of the largest companies on the planet. So basically what it is saying here is that if you had some kind of container that could hold the profits from all of the companies that I just read, all of the oil companies, including Royal Dutch Shell, Exxon and BP, Costco, Walmart, GM, Samsung, Verizon, Kroger, Apple, go down the list, okay? That the container would be too small to hold the amount of money that women would have earned had we got paid for our uncompensated labor. Our earnings would have dwarfed all of the profits combined of the 50 biggest corporations on the planet. Just sit there for a minute and think about that one. So that's part of the interactive. Let's go down to the meat and potatoes of the article. So it reads, society rarely takes stock of the value of unpaid care unless there is a disruption in the supply. And here's me, this is what I see. The reason why the societies rarely take stock in the value of unpaid care work, it is because women were brainwashed to be sweet, nice, and quiet while performing these tasks, which is basically smiling while you're being robbed of your potential from one decade to the next. So let me go on and read the article. It says on October 24th, 1975, 90% of Icelandic women refused to cook, clean, or look after children for one day. It brought the entire nation to a standstill.
This is a chart of the gender pay gap in developed economies. In the US, women are paid 17% less than men, and in Japan, 22%. On the other end, there's Iceland, where the pay gap is around 10%. It's one of the few countries in the world where women are paid almost as much as men. But that wasn't the case about 50 years ago. In 1975, the gender pay gap in the US was 37%, Japan was 42%, and Iceland was at 40%. So how did it go from here to here? To figure that out, you have to take a look at what happened on this day in 1975.
This idea was to show that we could bring society to a standstill. If we were not there, nothing was done. We expected a lot of women to show up at the demonstration, but not in our wildest dreams did we expect this.
This is the story of how Icelandic women shut down their country and changed it forever.
Men across the country scrambled to fill in, taking their children to work, and overwhelming the restaurants. You see, unpaid labor, what the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development defines as time spent doing routine housework, shopping for necessary household goods, childcare, tending to the elderly and other household or non-household members, and other unpaid activities related to household maintenance remains largely invisible to economists. Well, let me speak on that one and explain why. The reason why it remains largely invisible to economists is because about 75% of them are men. It is not affecting them personally the way that it is affecting their counterparts who are women. That's part of the reason why I'm here sharing this insight, so that you're not fooled into believing that you're being nice when in actuality you're being robbed of your time, your resources, and missing opportunities. You can be nice. I'm not saying to be mean and nasty or anything like that. It's perfectly okay to be nice, but you just need to make sure that you are compensated. And on a grander scale, there needs to be programs that fill in the gaps, because we women cannot. There's only 24 hours in a day, and each and every last one of us are limited and scarce resources. Time moves ahead, it doesn't go backwards. Okay, so too many nations rely on us smiling and sweating without pay in order to keep their economies going.
If the image of a woman during World War II was Rosie the Riveter, the 1950s female ideal became Susie Homemaker. The same women who were often encouraged to work in the factories to support the war effort were now urged to demonstrate their patriotism by staying home.
If you look at the difference between the way the magazines portrayed women in the 40s and magazines portrayed women in the 50s, you can see a huge propaganda effort took place to convince women that their place was in the home, that they didn't want to wear overalls, that really you were much more fulfilled if you could cook a good dinner than if you could make a wing on an airplane. You were much more fulfilled if you could cook a good dinner than if you could make a wing on an airplane.
You've no idea how much I've got to do. Remember, I haven't got your dream kitchen to make things easier.
This whole kitchen was designed for efficiency and convenience.
Experts like noted pediatrician and author Dr. Benjamin Spock and popular advice columnist Ann Landers encourage this homemaker image, advising women to put their children and husbands first, even at the expense of their own needs. Yet, even as many mothers prided themselves in their families, the number of women working outside the home rose steadily as they took jobs to help maintain their family's standard of living. Soon, both married and unmarried women were a significant part of the labor pool.
In the 1950s, 33% of the workforce is female.
So let me continue. The article goes on to say that it, meaning the uncompensated labor, is not part of the GDP calculations and rarely factors into other measures of economic growth. It is notoriously difficult to value because the normal market signals of supply and demand don't work. Traditional expectations that caring for children, the elderly, and the infirm meaning sick, should be done gratis within the family. And this obscures the true economic value of this work. So let me repeat this sentence for a second, okay? It's saying traditional expectations are that this is what the society believes, traditional expectations. And those expectations are that caring for children, the elderly, and the infirm should be done gratis within the family. Okay, and for those of you who don't know, gratis means to be done without a charge. In other words, it is labor that is expected to be done for free in exchange for a thank you. So this article continues to talk about what the women in Iceland showed us in 1975. So let me continue. And it says, and yet what the example of Iceland shows us is that women provide a huge unacknowledged subsidy. Okay? Our uncompensated labor is a subsidy to the smooth functioning of our economies, which would grind to a halt if women stopped doing this work. It continues and says, this International Women's Day, we looked at how much women would have made last year if they had earned minimum wage for their unpaid work. It says the value of this shadow labor is staggering. 10.9 trillion, according to an analysis by Oxfam. It exceeds the combined revenue of the 50 largest companies on last year's Fortune Global 500 list, including Walmart, Apple, and Amazon. We also compared the distribution of unpaid work across genders. India has the largest gap. Women there spend almost 6 hours a day managing the home. Indian men spend a paltry 52 minutes. The smallest divides are found in Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, where social safety net programs provide care for children and older people. I said it earlier, so let's look at the United Nations Human Development Index, or the UNHDI. Sweden ranks number 7, Denmark ranks number 6, and Norway ranks number 2 on the UNHDI. Iceland, by the way, ranks as number 3. Whereas the US, on the other hand, ranks at number 21. And India ranks at number 132 out of the 191 nations. So here you go. Through this cross-reference, you can see the consequences firsthand of women's worth being undervalued. Let's continue reading. In the United States, women perform an average of 4 hours of unpaid work per day compared to men's 2.5 hours. Back in 1965, when the government first started keeping track, American women did almost all of the unpaid work in the home. Okay? Now let's sit there for a minute, because we hear a lot of talking points about how things were back in the 50s and back in the 60s, as if women were sitting on the couch watching soap operas and eating bonbons all day. Okay? When in actuality, no. According to the government's track records, which began back in 1965 to keep up with this, women were working. They just weren't getting paid for it. Now let me continue. It says, although the gender gap in unpaid labor has narrowed, women still perform a disproportionate amount of unpaid work, and on top of their full-time jobs. Okay, so what your manosphere dummies will say is that women did not work in the olden days, when the fact is that back in 1965, women did work and just was not paid for it. So let me continue. A year after the women's strike in Iceland, remembered today as the quote-unquote Long Friday, the government passed a bill guaranteeing equal pay for women. Today, women there have one of the highest rates of labor force participation in the world. So basically what it's saying is that now there are state programs to help with daycare, to help with elder care, to help with care for those who are vulnerable. there's healthcare, there is housing. So since women are not juggling all of this uncompensated work because there are state programs to lighten the load, women can now focus on working jobs where they are compensated for their labor. That's what it means. It goes on to say that the outlook for the rest of the world is more dire. And we're over here in the United States, ranking number 21 on the UNHDI. We're the dire part, okay? Researchers at the World Economic Forum estimate that it will take another century before every country achieves gender parity. And what they mean by gender parity in this instance is to say that when you compare how men and women are performing, that it is about equal. So in terms of Sweden, there are instances where men spend about 3 hours a day as far as uncompensated labor is concerned, and women spend about 3.5. Okay. And let's see, another one is Denmark. Men spend a little more than 3 hours a day on uncompensated labor. Women spend about a little more than 4. So gender parity means that the numbers are close to each other. Unlike in the United States, men spend maybe about 2.5. Women are spending above 4. Okay, so, and as I mentioned in India, the men there are spending less than an hour, about 52 minutes. Women there are spending close to 6 hours per day performing uncompensated labor. Okay. So here is my overall take on it. American women need to stop doing uncompensated labor because it is causing us to suffer physically, mentally, and we end up losing out on opportunities to solidify ourselves later in life. And many of us end up becoming a burden to others, all because we're being nice, all because we're being paid with gratis, which means thank you. We get a thank you, we get a pat on the back, we get a hug, maybe a kiss on the cheek. And once we get the thank you, that's all our payment for everything we've done. We need to stop. It's okay to be nice. I'm not here saying don't be nice or anything like that. What I am advocating for is that be nice but get compensated. You can be generous with your time and you can smile, but make sure that you're smiling on your way to the bank. Additionally, programs need to be in place so that we can have our free time to ourselves again. The times of expecting American women, especially, to sacrifice sleep and our free time that could have been spent on edifying ourselves so that we can keep others from falling apart, this needs to be over with. We need to take a note from the women of Iceland in 1975 and their Long Friday. We need to do our own version of the Long Friday so that we can also enjoy greater workforce participation where we are being compensated for our time. And by doing so, we can also have a greater percentage of our people being wealthier, more educated, healthier, and with a longer lifespan. The average lifespan in Iceland as of 2020 is 83.07 years. The average lifespan here in the US as of 2020 is 77.28 years. Iceland is number 3 on the UNHDI. The US is number 21. I hope that this video and the article that we analyzed from the New York Times helps you to see the value of women and our uncompensated contributions. I hope that it also helps you to see why you should reject performing tasks that will rob you of your resources and diminish your potential to flourish. I hope that everyone can also understand the need to establish services that employ trained professionals such as daycare staff, nursing home staff, mental health professionals, transportation professionals, and so forth that will lighten the load on families, especially women. So that's all I have to say for now. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and click on the notifications bell so that you will know whenever I upload any new content. Take care until next time.